Today's guest is a productivity consultant and professional speaker with an award-winning book about unplugging from technology as a habit. His book, SPACEMAKER, was awarded the Best Personal Development Book at the Australian Business Book Awards in 2021. Welcome to the show, Daniel. How are you doing?
Yeah, I'm good. Thank you for having me on the show, Toby.
Thank you so much for joining me on this episode of Mirror Talk. I really appreciate your presence here right now. It's so wonderful. We're talking before we started recording about the different parts of the world that we're in, but I'm happy that we are able to, have this conversation even with technology. And that's the topic we're going to be talking about also today. So it's
amazing,
so awesome.
isn't it? I mean, you're in Germany. I'm in Tasmania, which is at the very bottom of Australia. We're talking on different, well, it's the same day, but it's very late for you and very early for me. But yeah, isn't it amazing that we can use technology like this to have these conversations and then share them with people in other parts of the world? It's amazing.
Yeah, it's a beautiful thing. And that's why I'm so, excited to be speaking with you today because your book, The SPACEMAKER, gives us that fine balance, teaches us how to make use of this technology as a tool and also how to prevent ourselves from overusing it also. So I know I'm already giving away so much, but before that, is it possible for you to just share with us a little bit about yourself, about your life and career journey so far? I know you studied physiotherapy, project management, you're a trainer, you're a coach, you're a keynote speaker. What's made you, go into all of these areas of life, Daniel?
Yeah, it's a big question. I'll keep it short, I suppose. But so I started off as a physiotherapist and, worked in healthcare for more than a decade. I worked in Europe, worked in Australia. Then I ended up in management and I just found that I loved leading people, managing systems and helping improve the way in which we work. And I had a health service in the government sector. And then I learnt to be a project manager and I started to train and equip my friends and colleagues to be more productive in the things that I'd learnt in management. And then that just kind of accidentally spilled out to become a training organization because more people wanted to be trained in how to get their inbox to zero or how to use online to-do lists. And so that just became part of my journey. And we eventually started a company called SPACEMAKERS because my heartbeat is to work with busy people who are, who work a lot, who are capable, who are always online and help them to make space in their life to think and rest and connect with loved ones, to be productive without running to stand still. And so, yeah, and that message has just grown over the years as we've become more frantic and more busy. I've just realized more and more that the people I work with, they don't necessarily need more money and they certainly don't need more information. They need more space. They need more time to reflect on their inner life, to be able to live and breathe and enjoy life away from a screen, to focus on other things in and around, working with technology constantly. They're the group of people I work with. It's not anti-tech, but it's just recognizing that there's a broad life that we want to live and we need space. So, yeah, that's what I do. I've got experience in a whole lot of other areas of life as well. I've worked in Christian ministry. I have run nonprofits, and obviously I've done authoring, and now I spend most of my time doing keynote speaking and productivity and leadership training and coaching.
Yes, that's so beautiful. I mean, I was going through your profile and I was like, oh, it's a whole spectrum of things that you've done. And if you want to go into every aspect of what you've done, it's going to be like 5 episodes of this podcast, actually. But I'd love us to focus in this episode on, SPACEMAKER, because I'm so interested, about learning how to make space in this digital space that we're in, or digital technology that we have. So what's inspired you to, write this book called SPACEMAKER? I know you have a company called SPACEMAKER, but what inspired you to put all of this information into a book for us?
Yeah, it's funny actually that the book ended up being the same name as my business. It wasn't my intention at all. I just wanted to write a book to help people who were feeling overwhelmed by technology. I worked with a lot of executives and they were busy, but they were busy in a way that was different than they used to be busy. And I started to realize that just all the little gaps in their life were starting to be taken away from by technology. And I heard story after story. I mean, I remember chatting with one lady who was a young mum, was a mother with 2 young children, I'm sorry. And she said, look, I'm at home and I know I want to be with my young kids and I want to give them my attention because I know that when I look back at the end of my life, it'll be my kids and my family and my community and things like that that really matter. But all I can think about is how many hearts I'm not seeing on Instagram, and I just want to grab my phone and see what my latest post is doing. And she knew that was wrong. You know, there was this sense that her life was being overtaken and her brain was being shaped too much by technology. And whether it be email or Instagram or whether it be, you know, the news or the stock market, there's this gravitational pull towards always being online that is beyond the necessity of doing our job, and that starts to cause us to have a lack of space in our lives. And so I really wanted to write a book to help people learn to unplug as a pattern and to help them, because I had burnt out in my past and I'd experienced overwork and all the challenges of feeling frazzled and too busy. And so I just thought I'd share those ideas. And then many years later, I'd been writing the book it took 7 years to write. And I think about 4 years in, someone said, why don't you just call it SPACEMAKER? Because I couldn't find a name for it. And I'm like, okay, that actually works really well.
Yes. Yeah, it's a wonderful, title for a book because, once we're able to get rid of all of these distractions and everything, we're able to create more space for ourselves in life also. So can you teach us how to unplug, how to unwind, and how to think clearly in this digital age that we're in?
Yeah. So look, the first thing I think I've noticed is that we have a relationship with the online world, and we need to recognize that it's not just something we use. It's more like we have a relationship, and sometimes that relationship's healthy. Sometimes it's codependent. Sometimes it's, narcissistic. I remember hearing your podcast on narcissism. So, and I'm like, oh, some of that is how we use technology. But so we have a relationship, and what I've noticed is that the practices of unplugging from technology, they're really simple. Like in some ways, it's quite ridiculous that I have a job helping people turn off their phone. I mean, it's not complicated. Like one day a week, turn off your phone and don't spend time working, and actually focus on other things that are truly restful and life-giving. Now, that is not a hard message to understand, but it's very hard to do, isn't it? And it's hard to do not because it's physically hard to turn off your phone and put it away. It's hard to do because we have a whole lot of emotions and beliefs and stories attached to our devices. And when we turn off our devices for a significant period of time, well, then we're breaking a deeply held relationship. We're impacting the loves and the longings of our heart, and we're changing the patterns of our brain. And so we need to understand what I call the paradigm of technology and all the different parts of the story that cause us to want to always be online in a healthy way, but also an unhealthy way, in order to then work out, okay, what parts of technology are really great. I love that I can talk to my friend Toby on the other side of the world. That's a really useful way of doing technology. But when I'm at dinner and I'm scrolling Instagram instead of talking to my kids, well, maybe that's not a pattern or a relationship pattern that I want to mimic or continue. Does that make sense? And so it has to start by changing our story, because our beliefs follow our stories, and many of us haven't examined the stories that cause us to be so deeply entrenched in the online world. That's where we start.
That's very true. Yeah, that's very, very good. And also, I just love what you just said right now. Like, we have this tool. It's a very wonderful tool that we could use to benefit, our progress in life, to benefit, to make us move forward or achieve our goals in life. Basically, like having this wonderful conversation with my friend Daniel, all the way in Australia, for example. For me, it's something very important to me, and it benefits me in a lot of ways because I'm going to learn so much from this conversation, like I'm already doing already. But if I, just pick up my phone and, like you said, maybe scrolling through TikTok, for example, just mindlessly just watching videos, then that way I'm not profiting so much from it in that sense. Yes. But but I just want to know, like, now sometimes we say, I'm scrolling through TikTok because I'm trying to I don't know, look for some keynote speakers, for example, to get, to interview. But I know sometimes it could be so self-deceiving probably. So I would love to know, are there like some ways I could, effectively examine my relationship with the online world? Are there sometimes I could, is there a way I could know that, I'm not going through Instagram at dinner table because I'm trying to find out, look for the next Daniel Sih, or for example, or I'm not, you understand? Or I'm just, scrolling through Instagram because I am addicted to just, being up to date basically on what is happening on Instagram.
Yeah. And it's so true, isn't it? Like you start off looking at something that's valuable and that is aligned with your personal why, or something that's meaningful. And then you end up seeing an advert, or you get this random idea, and then you realize you've spent 2 hours watching cat videos.
Exactly.
This is the way the world works, isn't it? So and that it's not bad. I mean, we're not trying to say that that's never okay, but you don't want that to become the modus operandi. You don't want that to be the way in which you live day by day. One of the things I think that's helpful is to do a digital audit. So basically, from the moment you wake up to the moment you go to bed, you may want to do this for, let's say, a week. Just pay attention and be aware of the types of habits that shape your behaviors, because there's a digital liturgy of our life. There are particular digital habits that we form, that we do again and again, because we're very habitual people. I mean, I think James Clear says 80% of, was it James Clear? Might have been Charles Duhigg said that 80% of our habits, of our behaviors are habitual. And that's the same with the online world. But a lot of the time, those habits have been shaped by the design of technology, by the shareholders of Silicon Valley tech companies, and they're designed to make you use their products more and more, not necessarily to add value to your life at a heart and a soul level. And so therefore, it's worth starting with awareness. So by digital audits, wake up. What do? Do you turn off your alarm clock, which is your phone, and then immediately tap on Gmail or TikTok or the news? Does that make sense? What do you do habitually? Because it will be pretty much the same every day. And then from there, how does that shape your mind? So you want to audit your habits, so what you're physically doing, but you also want to reflect on your thinking. That's called metacognition. So, okay, for me, what I realized is I would open up my phone, I would click on Gmail, because it's email and work that tends to be the panacea of all things for me. And so I would click on Gmail, and then I just read my emails that came in overnight. And then I would maybe respond to some, or I would start to think about the clients or the problems that I have, and I'd automatically go into work mode from the very moment I woke up. And I hadn't reflected on my day. I hadn't prayed or had meditation. I hadn't practiced thankfulness. I hadn't talked to my wife, who's next to me, and I hadn't reflected on the plan that I wanted for the day itself, so that I wasn't directing the day. I was allowing whatever popped into my inbox to shape the trajectory of my day. So that was one of those things I thought, that's not a very helpful liturgy. That's not a digital liturgy I want to repeat. And then you just go through, when do you have a shower? When do you have your first coffee? How does technology work in that? When do you check your calendar? And then what types of things do you do day by day? At nighttime, how habitually do you watch Netflix or scroll social media, et cetera, et cetera? And even reflect on the amount of time you're spending, because, we're finite. We have 24 hours a day. Hopefully some of it is sleep. And if you spend an hour scrolling TikTok videos, well, that's an hour you can't read a book or play a board game with your kids or write something creative or play music. Do you know what I mean? It's everything is a trade-off. Every action you do in the digital age is going to add or withdraw from your life. Oliver Berkman says you get 4,000 weeks. That's not a lot. That's your entire life, 4,000 weeks. And the small things that we do day by day will change the trajectory of our life and will allow us to be or not be the person we're called to be. It allows us to live our own life or someone else's script. And so therefore, what are the habits? And some of them will be fine or really helpful. I'm not at all anti-technology. As I said, I probably use technology 10 hours a day because of the nature of my work, but I'm very intentional in unplugging in the times when I'm not working, when I'm not using technology. And I'm very intentional to make sure I have the spaces to think deeply in and around my work, to rest deeply on my days off without technology at all, and to interact with people in my life who really matter without it being kind of half mediated and half distracted multitasking on a screen. So it's about the quality of life in and around my work, and making sure that I'm aware. So it starts, look, that was a long explanation, I'm sorry, but it starts with awareness. Start with that awareness of your habits.
That's true. That means we have to be accountable and also, pay attention. We have to pay attention to our habits and the motivation the motivation behind the habit, also like the intention behind the way we behave and do things. Yeah. Yes.
Yeah, absolutely. My heartbeat with making space for people is to live the inner life, to allow their external actions to be shaped by their bigger why. People say, what is productivity? And it's not being more efficient. It's not getting more things done. David Allen says it's getting the right things done. I would say it's getting the right things done with the right heart, the right intention. You can even get the right things done, but do it from the wrong motivation, and that changes how it plays out. But all of that requires that we have time to think, that we have time to know ourselves and examine the inner life and allow our outer life to flow from the inside out. Because you can live for a long time and be quite successful just going and never thinking at a spirit level, at a heart level. But eventually you'll end up being anxious or broken on the inside and projecting that into the world around you. You won't essentially lead well. My heart is for people to make space to really think about who they are and why they live, and to be intentional in addressing the way that they make decisions. And that can only happen nowadays if we intentionally make space from technology to actually do that reflective work.
Yes. I love that you're talking about, intentionally making space from technology, unplugging. So I'd love you to, share some tips on how we could unplug. How can we effectively unplug from, technology for some time? And, what can we do at that time when we're unplugging from technology too? Because sometimes it can be very difficult to live without technology.
Oh, yeah, of course. Absolutely. And so look, it's in my book, I talk about the fact that you need technology to be productive. And most of what I do in my career actually is help people use technology well. So I call them the habits of keeping pace. So you need to keep pace with the world around us and to constantly be learning new apps and new programs and new ways of working. Otherwise, you won't be productive. But then there comes a point where, you imagine an upside down U, there comes a point where you reach this plateau, and I call that the productive middle, where more technology isn't making you more productive, but you're not really losing productivity. But then if you keep going, if you reach for your phone first thing in the morning and last thing at night, if you're constantly online for work and rest and just don't have space for everything else, you eventually slide down the bottom of that right side of the curve, and more technology makes you less productive, less happy, and less healthy from the research. And so the space-making habits, as opposed to the pace-making habits, are the ones that are about unusing technology to get productive, as opposed to using it to be productive. And we need both sets of skills in the digital age, and that's where it becomes complicated, because it's not good or bad, yes or no. It's not binary. We need to be really good at technology, and we need to be really intentional and really good at not using technology. And that's the conversation we need to have more of, because I'm more and more convinced that most leaders need to spend less time on technology and to have more time doing nothing. And that is how they'll be truly productive. And that's a conversation that is particularly relevant post-COVID. So how do we do that? How do we make space and return to the productive middle? My solutions are about creating patterns and rhythms in your life. I also talk about making your technology less addictive. There are some very practical things we can do. Okay, where shall I start? Maybe the less addictive stuff. That's easy. Design your phone to be less addictive. Get rid of social media apps where you can. Get rid of all notifications. So no email notifications, no social media notifications. Remove as many apps as you can possibly remove so that you just don't have so much there, and become aware of the ones that you gravitate to when, you're at the supermarket and you're bored. What are the ones you click on? And you might even want to ban them or set time limits on those types of apps using, the tools that both Android and Apple have. I've made my phone grayscale so that it's black and white, which is really boring. And the research, no, it's not research, but basically when you look at a phone and it doesn't have color, it's actually less attractive. And so, and videos are particularly boring. And so I have a way where I can easily turn it back to color, but I keep it grayscale most of the time just to try to make it less appealing, because I know how addicted I am to this phone. So there are some practical things, and make sure you turn it off at night, obviously, so you're not getting notifications or anything else when you're trying to sleep, because the last thing you want to do is allow someone else's interruption to break your sleep. So you can start by making space, by making the apps and the applications and the devices as less addictive as possible. But ultimately, it will be the patterns and the rhythms of space making that you create. And I have some daily habits, some weekly habits, and some kind of habits you set out throughout the year. So you have this beautiful rhythm of being unplugged and resting and living well in and around all the technology. So I'm not sure if you want me to get specific, but
I would really love you to talk about I'd love you to talk about the patterns. Actually, I want to see if I could also apply that to myself, or if anyone out there could also, make use of this pattern already that I make use of also.
Okay, well, let's start with an annual pattern. One of the things, and I'm not sure how it is in Germany, but in Australia, the research says that the busiest people who work 50 hours or more on a regular basis, most of them say they can't take all of their annual holidays because they don't have time. They're too busy to take a rest. And so they work and they work and they work, and then they kind of crash out, or they try to find time to have a rest. And so one of the practices my wife and I have put into place is that at the start of our year, for us it's January, it might be right now for you, it might be in July is when you really start to think about your year. When the year starts, book your annual leave in advance so that you have your 4 to 5 or whatever weeks you have pre-planned, and think about them in a way that is timed with when you get tired throughout the year. So that for me, I get really tired around August, and that's where it's been dark and we've had winter. So I'll make sure we have a really good break at that time, and it's a really restful break. Whereas for us, summer is a time where we'll do lots of socializing and it's not so restful, but we'll go on adventures. So what I'm saying is pre-book in your rest times, the space in your life, well before you actually book your work and book your activity. So it's again starting the year with that pattern: rest before work, space before activity. That's just the start. And for some of those holidays, I would say, how can you do it without technology, or you have times where you're not plugged in? So that's like an annual pattern. The weekly pattern is probably the hardest of the lot, and I won't spend much time on it, but I actually am a real believer in a full day a week without technology, or at least a very modified day. And the reason I say that is for people like you and I think you mentioned you work as an engineer. So we both are on technology all the time. That's what work is. For me, work involves communicating with people on a screen, swiping and typing using a screen, moving between different internet browsers and shifting between applications. That's what I do for work. And so the problem in this knowledge worker age is we have a day off. And actually a lot of us are even working from home now. So you have a day off. And what is the difference? If you're swiping and typing on, TikTok and Instagram, and you're watching Netflix and you're playing games, your brain doesn't get to stop working, because your brain can't tell the difference between Outlook and Instagram. It's still the same input neurologically. You're still using the same types of devices, and you're using the same tool, which is called the internet. And so many of us don't ever rest because we don't separate the activities we do for work from the ones we do for rest. It'd be a bit like if we were a gardener and we gardened all week, and then to rest, we decided to garden. And it wouldn't be physically restful. No. But we're knowledge workers. And so if we're online all week, and that's what work is, well, then we have to do the opposite if we want to have a truly restful day, because the problems for us are mental health and mental exhaustion, not just physical. And so if we're going to have what I call a digital Sabbath, we need to know what is work for us, what is restful. So I also needed to know what is deeply restful for me. And for me, counterintuitively, that when I thought about what really energizes me and my family, for me personally, it's things like chainsawing wood and going physically getting active in the garden, because it's totally different from what I do for work. It's physical, it's outdoors, it's messy, it's tangible. I find that really restful, as long as I don't have to do it, like not like a to-do list type task, if it's just joyful. So that's rest for me. I love reading books. I love waking up and having no plans and making pancakes with the kids, playing board games with them, or just going on adventures like walking on the beach together without a phone. Yeah. So because of knowing what work is and knowing what rest is and knowing how to do that together, we then decided, well, we would plan a day, one day a week, our digital Sabbath or our weekly day of rest. And that had to involve turning off my phone, had to involve turning off our technologies. So that's what we do. We have this ritual where we go from work to rest. Pardon me. We turn off our devices. I turn off my devices. My kids still can use technology in the morning because that's part of how they rest. But and then we have this full day, which is digital free. And I just find it incredibly life-giving, restful in a way that I never experienced rest before. My wife definitely would say that it's been our digital Sabbath that has made our marriage and family healthy and strong. And it's the way in which I can disconnect from work in a very deep way, both mentally and physically. Particularly working from home now, it's even more important. So, but that's probably the hardest out of all the space-making habits, and it takes practice and design. I literally show people how to plan in a very systematic way a day of rest and how to create patterns and rhythms to help you do that. So that's kind of cold turkey type space making.
Yeah. And
the last ones are the daily ones, which are simple and easier to start, but I could talk about them in a moment.
Yes, no, I was just about to ask that, actually. I was about to ask that, how do we do that on a daily basis also, like taking those breaks on a daily basis?
Yeah, the daily ones are simple. So I would say things like start and end the day without your phone. We've already talked about that. So basically charge your phone outside of your bedroom and learn to start and end the day with a pause. I call them the daily pauses. It's really good for your mental health. It's really great to reflect on the day. It's really great to start the day with a plan. Digital free meals is a really good pause and very well research-based. So I would say at least once a day, eat a meal without technology. If you have flatmates or if you have family or friends that you can eat with, then eat with them every day. All phones away, turned off, not even in your pocket, just like no devices. The research for families is amazing. It says that if, let's say, a 12-year-old girl is raised in a family that eats together around a table without technology and does it most days, they will end up when they're 18 years old with better college entrance scores, less mental health problems, mood disorders. They will be happier. They will have less debt. They will end up doing better in life just because they ate a digital free meal together. Young kids have better numeracy and literacy skills, so they can read and write better just because they eat together with their family without a screen. So it's so helpful to have that pause where you learn to connect with people and talk and make eye contact and hear about the day of people in your life. And I even have questions in my book, very simple questions to ask each other to create conversation, just like, what are you thankful for? And then just talk about that. And it can be tremendously valuable if you did that every day as a habit. You sat, you ate with someone you cared about, with no devices, and asked them, what are you thankful for from today? So it's a total game changer. And that bit of space can change your life. I like exercise without music and without podcasts. Not all the time. I love podcasts. I love audiobooks. I love learning. But the problem is we're getting to this stage where we're filling our mind so much with information and we don't pause to reflect on that information and apply it in our life and our context. So we're becoming people who are just almost obese with information, but there's no exercise. It's like input but no output. Do you know what I mean? Eating but no energy. So we need to make space where we can think again. So I have a habit where a few times a week I go to the gym and don't listen to podcasts, or I go swimming and don't listen to podcasts. I don't count laps. I just think, or I walk. I often walk down the path, and I intentionally spend an hour walking and reflect on my day. So I would say the daily pause is making those habits intentional, turning off your devices and allowing yourself to start thinking about your day and the meaning of your life and the conversations you've had and the emotions that you've felt. That's what leads to wisdom, not more information, but the application and reflection on that information. So there are three of many examples of how you can unplug as a pattern throughout the day. And those little patterns can really change your relationships, like a digital free meal. They can change your ability to strategize and to know yourself and to process the information in your world, like the thinking habits. And you've got the habits of resting, like a day off where you have a true day off each week, or even some of just the restfulness of, let's say, meditating or praying or journaling in the morning by not starting and ending the day with technology. So those little habits change your life, and they make you far more able to use technology in a way that masters life rather than becomes a slave to tech.
Yeah, those are wonderful, tips, and those are like great habits that one could, make use of. And I believe that when one is consistent with them, it's going to make one's life, much more beautiful and create more space actually for one to do other wonderful things actually. But, Daniel, in this digital space that we're in right now, I could, for example, have the intention to, go on a digital sabbatical day or something like that, or take a Sabbath day, for example, and maybe turn off my phone or put off, just take a break from the screen. But sometimes, I could just be so weak and fall a victim of, distractions and temptations. How can I deal with this? How can I deal with temptations and distractions?
Yeah. I mean, firstly, I'd say be kind on yourself. I mean, I wrote this book and then I found this quote by Richard Bach, and he said, "I teach best what I most need to learn." And the reason I know so much about making space and my battle with, being online and having digital overuse is because I could totally be addicted to my devices all the time. And I love work. I could work all the time. So these are things that I sometimes struggle with. I talked about being burnt out years ago, and I still struggle sometimes with moving that way. So be kind on yourself. I mean, it's okay to love a Netflix series and to binge on it and to enjoy a particular, series for a particular time. But if that becomes habitual, then you really are sucking out the life that you could have in other ways. So the other thing I realize is that the struggle with it is part of what matures you as a person. Often what we struggle with most actually shapes our character most. I've met some incredible, inspiring people who have had tremendously difficult backgrounds or have struggled with addictions and have overcome them, but they still know that struggle's a little bit there. And I think it's the same with overwork and with technology, that as long as you're doing the struggle, as long as you're in the arena battling to try to take control of your life and to be intentional, then that very struggle is part of what shapes your character, and you'll learn and grow through the struggle, even if you don't always win. So you learn through your failures as well as your successes. And as long as you continue that struggle and continue to practice turning off your phone, continue to recognize, I've drifted back into addiction again with social media, then, you're going to win eventually because you keep battling. And the last thing is do it in community. Make sure that you've got others around you who are trying to raise kids the same way, who are keeping you accountable in a really life-giving and positive way, who are, just, I suppose, people who you can talk to and who live inspirational lives and not just spend every moment scrolling on screens and playing games. If you have people like that in your life, then you'll start to be able to ask some questions and to talk about the realities of living the life that you're meant to live. I don't know.
Yeah.
What connects with you with that? Do you have things from that connect with you from what you already do?
Yeah, of course. I mean, like taking, walks, for example, like, just every day I try to go on walks, and I mean, sometimes I'm tempted or I'm distracted in the sense that I take my phone along with me. I listen to music along the way. And sometimes, I'm taking a new route and I feel like taking a picture, and I take a picture. Then from taking a picture, I check my messages, and from there, I ruin the whole, break I'm taking from, digital space. Yeah. But yeah, that's why I was asking actually, because, I set the intention to go on a walk and, have a break from my screen because I've been on screen all day, but then end up checking the screen from time to time. In my 1 hour walk also, I could relate totally with that of taking 1 hour walks, but just, break it in between. And I'm always looking for ways to, ensure that I go for that walk without having to look on my screen for a long period of time. But you made a lot of sense in the sense that, when talking about community, like it's very important for us to have that community, that's people around us that could inspire us to live a much more better life. We're not so much better life, but help us to achieve our goals of not overusing technology or becoming burnt out, for example, from our workaholic behaviors or stuff like that. Yes, people that could help us find that balance basically with our use of technology, and also with the real life that we have to live off screen also.
Yeah. Yes. And look, even things like with walking, I'm now in the habit of just not taking my phone because I'm exactly the same with you. I'll have an idea, I'll put it in my to-do list, and then I'll check my email, and then I'll think, maybe I'll listen to the rest of that podcast.
Exactly. Yeah.
It just goes from one thing to the next. So that, for me, that's why I actually put my phone away on my day off. I turn it on at about 11 o'clock in the day just to see if there's any text messages. So I'm not saying it has to be like religious or anything in that sense of, you can be sensible. If I'm walking actually in the bush and I might need it for safety, I'll put it in my backpack, even though I won't touch it. So it's just about being intentional with where you need to have space away from your phone. And remember, it's not about not doing something bad. It's about doing something that's life-giving and good. It is beautiful to walk and to smell the eucalypts or the pine trees, and to be in the moment and to be present. I tell my kids, you can actually look at a waterfall and smell it and feel it and remember it without a photograph. And in fact, the photograph sometimes stops you from being in the moment and actually smelling it and enjoying it and feeling it. And so it's just about reclaiming the breadth and joy of life away from a screen, so that when we're online, we're using it well, but just to not become these people who lose the humanity of life by being people who can't experience the breadth and depth of all that life brings relationally, spiritually, environmentally. There's more to life than being digitally connected, and that's what we're trying to reclaim. It's not actually about turning off our phones. It's about making space for a life worth living.
That's true. And how did you do it? I know you're a father of, you have 3 kids. You're a father of 3 kids. And, this is a very modern age where everything, they have to watch the Peggy Pigs or, I don't know, Paw Patrol. And they have to like play some games. I don't know. A lot of things that have to be done, online. And, even reading also nowadays is mostly done online also. Getting some, workout instructions done online. Maybe get some tips, watching some videos to make a meal is done online also. How do you deal as a parent, as a husband, as a friend to some people out there? How do you deal with technology, and how does technology also affect your relationship in all of these aspects?
Yeah, look, I mean, that's a huge question. I do run digital parenting seminars as well, because like it's the number one, the book is about how to manage space as adults, but the number one question I have is, well, what about my children? When should I get them a phone, and how do I raise them? Because they are always online, and it's creating pain and struggle in our relationships. So it's a very real tension. I have a teenager, so a 15-year-old girl, I have a 12-year-old boy, and then a 10-year-old boy. So I'm a little bit beyond Peppa Pig, although I've done Peppa Pig as well. And I mean, really, I would say is that it starts with us being intentional and aware. Remember, I talked about recognizing that we have a relationship with the online world and that we have beliefs and habits and practices, because the kids are going to follow your example first. If every time they see you, you have your phone, and if, let's say, I always say, if aliens were to look at your family life or our culture and say, what is our God? They would absolutely say it's our phone, because of the way we use them. Like, it's what we go to constantly for everything. You know, we would be looking like we're worshipping these little devices. So if that's what your kids are seeing in your behavior day by day, and you don't have any other way of expressing what is important, well, then they're going to immediately be drawn to copying their parents. So that's the first thing. Start with yourself. The second thing I would say is, look, they just need to be conversations, and age-appropriate ones. We made sure we created healthy digital boundaries from a very early age with the children. We made sure that at first, you know, at a very young age, they didn't get technology at all. The research says don't give kids devices until they're 2-year-old. They shouldn't be watching TV or being online for their mental health. That's like a national, international recommendation by pediatricians. We didn't quite go that strict, but they hardly watch TV when they were under 2. Up to the age of 10, it's not meant to be more than an hour a day. Maybe it's up to either 8 or 10 years old. So again, it's a little bit of technology, but not a lot. And I would say be more mindful of the lean forwards active technologies like online gaming or Minecraft, or the kind of interactive 3-dimensional experiences, because they are more addictive in terms of the brain, and they draw you far more in than the lean back technologies like Netflix or watching traditional media. So most parents are really cautious about television, but they're like, yeah, fine, you can go online with games. And I would say be the opposite in terms of the addictive nature and the way it shapes your brain. And so we gave our kids tokens, so they had half an hour tokens, which meant a token was half an hour of screen time, and they get like 10 tokens a week. They get to choose when they get to use them, although they can't binge and do more than 2 hours at a time, because it just creates chaos. It just makes them aggro or moody. But yeah, they can earn tokens by doing jobs. So we always get lots of jobs done in our house, and it's trying to show that there's limits to technology, that it's great to use, and you get to use it like money. There are times where you get to use it, there's times where you don't. And then we also have conversations around technology all the time to help them recognize the good and the bad, so that they can have experiences of life that aren't totally immersed online. That's my heart, just for kids and adults, that they will experience a world which is broad in depth and isn't constantly connected. And then later on, if they become cyborgs and we put chips in them and their life is shaped by artificial intelligence, at least they'll remember that they played board games with dad one day, and that was the best time of their life. And maybe they should pull the microchip out of their brain and take off their cybernetic arm, and then play a board game and remember that, you know, humanity is also pretty amazing as well.
That's true. Yes. I love the fact that you're talking about, you know, technology and our brain. Can you explain the relationship between them? Like, how does technology affect, you know, the structure of our brain or how our brain works?
Yeah, look, there's lots of research that suggests that when you spend a lot of time on the internet, it changes your brain. And by changing your brain, then it changes your perception of the world. So, for example, media multitaskers, so people who are regularly flipping from one thing to the next, they actually lose the grey matter in the frontal cortex of their brain, the frontal lobe. I think it's the ACC. I can't quite remember the name for it, but basically it's an area which is related to mood regulation, the ability to tell information that is important from information that is meaningless, and the ability to be patient and still. And so the kind of experiences we're seeing where we find it really hard to sit and read a book, a physical book, without wanting to check our phone after the third page, where we find it hard to just sit in silence and enjoy, you know, a waterfall, or where we find it hard to, I suppose, to just sit patiently on a bus and not have to entertain ourselves. That's because we're practicing the internet and it's changing our brain. Imagine, I often say I had to play piano when I was young and I practiced 15 to 20 minutes a day at the most. It was always a fight. But by practicing the piano, eventually I learned to play, and I could play pieces of music like Chopin or Mozart without even having to look at the music, because my brain had embedded those notes and those kind of patterns into my way of thinking, and my brain changed. On an MRI, people who play a lot of music have a slightly different brain than people who don't. But that was only 20 minutes a day. The average American is practicing the internet 12 hours a day. The average Australian, 9.4 hours a day, and an office worker, 12 hours a day. So can you imagine practicing the piano 12 hours a day, how that would change the makeup of your brain? And yet we don't think of practicing the internet in the same way. But we're actually practicing something that changes us from the inside out. It remolds our mindset and it shapes our perception of the world. So the good news about neuroplasticity is the brain can change even up to the age of 90 years old. So if you start unplugging regularly and broaden the neurological experiences of life outside of a screen, well, then your brain will change in a different way again. But all I'm saying is that too much internet practice makes us unhappy. It makes us unhealthy. In fact, the research in teens says that almost all on-screen activities, particularly 3 or more hours a day, makes teenagers unhappy, and almost all non-screen activities make them statistically happier. And I actually believe the research is probably very true for adults as well. So broaden what you put into your brain, and then you will change the experiences of your humanity.
I believe that. Wow, that's so beautiful, Daniel. I really enjoy, everything that you've taught me today. Like, I'm so happy about this, but I know a lot more is packed into your book, and I would love you to tell us how we could get this book. Where can we buy it from? Can you tell us about your website also? What are the resources that we could also make use of in order to unplug and make more space in our lives?
Yeah, look, I'd love you to pick up my book, obviously. It's called SPACEMAKER, How to Unplug, Unwind and Think Clearly in the Digital Age. And it's available, on Amazon, Booktopia, Book Depository, wherever you are. Also, it's an audio book with me narrating, so feel free to pick it up if that's your preferred way of listening. I have a website, spacemakers.com.au, so that's plural, and the AU is Australia. And you can get a free lot of videos and worksheets to help you plan a digital day off once a week. If you're interested, I have a blog post. And I love working with teams remotely. I do work with teams in America and Europe to help them either with practical keeping pace skills like Email Ninja and List Assassin, getting your inbox to zero and organizing your life with a to-do list. But we also run Making Space training to help the digital wellness of teams, so that teams can reflect on their behaviors and so that you can invest in the health of your team who are working in a hybrid working environment and are at risk of being online so much that it's bad for their mental health and happiness. So, I'd love to connect with you and have a Zoom call if you're interested.
Yeah, that's awesome. So please, this information in the show notes of this episode, I encourage everyone who is listening and who is interested to just copy the link, click on the link and get across to Daniel, order the book on Amazon or on any platform possible, and make more space, unplug and become a much more better person, actually. And if there's a lesson, or if there's something in life that you've gained so far from all your experiences that you would love to share with other people, what would that be?
Oh, so many lessons. Look, in terms of what we've talked about, I'd probably just say be really encouraged, because a little bit of space can transform your life. You don't need a lot. You don't have to suddenly become a hermit and turn off your technology all the time, but you just pick up one small habit and start to think a bit more deeply and be a bit more present. And then that'll give you the confidence to start another space-making habit and just build on it. And eventually you'll realize, actually, I've got a much more balanced life, and my relationships are more balanced, and I'm starting to know myself a bit more. So, I just think space is really valuable. And just a little bit makes a lot of difference. So go for it.
Yeah. Yes, I love that. Thank you so much, Daniel. Thank you so much for teaching us so much about, making space in our lives, reducing that use of technology to, you're not anti-technology, but I mean, you are teaching us how to make use of it, and also create space for ourselves and to become better people with the tools that we have present for us, or, made available to us already. Thank you so much for this awesome conversation. I really appreciate it.
No, my pleasure. And thank you so much for staying up late at night and talking to this Australian from all the other side of the world. I really appreciate you staying up for me. Thanks, Toby.
That's beautiful.